Good morning. I am Dr. Maha Isa, Professor and Head of Medical Parasitology Department, Faculty of Medicine, Alexandria University. First, I would like to welcome you to module of infectious diseases. This module, we are going to take it in the first semester of the third year in the form of two parts. Module Infectious Disease 1, which is concerned by what is an infectious disease, and Infectious Disease 2, in which you will know what it does mean to have an infectious disease, why do we care, how do pathogens make us sick, and how do we get better by diagnosis and the treatment, and be able to prevent and control this disease. Let us start now with Module 1. What is an infectious disease? What are the causes of infectious diseases? Infectious disease can be caused by viruses, bacteria, fungi, and finally parasites. In this module, microbiology department will give you viral, bacterial, and fungal diseases, whereas the medical parasitology department will give you parasitic diseases. Let us start parasites as causative agent of infectious diseases. The question now, you can ask yourself, why I study parasites? Because parasites cause major diseases. For example, it is estimated that about 3 million infections occurs per year, and about 1 million deaths per year globally occurs. Malaria alone, one of the major parasitic disease, kills about 3,000 children every day in Africa. That is why it is very important to study parasitic diseases. Different forms of diseases we have. For example, this is filarial disease, you call it elephantiasis, where the legs becomes very huge and enlarged due to obstruction of lymphatic system by parasites. This is another parasitic disease known as visceral leishmaniasis. This disease is fatal if left untreated, like cancer, exactly like cancer. This is cutaneous leishmaniasis, parasite affecting the skin. If not treated, it will lead to an ugly scar as if the child has burn in his face. As you see, the cornea is opaque. This is a parasitic disease known as river blindness. It causes blindness. This is another disease affecting children and adults. In children, it can lead to myocarditis and meningoencephalitis. This disease is known as Chagas disease in South America. And you can see here malaria patient, which is also a fatal disease if not treated. And as I said previously, it kills 3,000 children per day alone in Africa. Let us start with lecture 1, Introduction to Medical Parasitology. What is parasitology? What is meant by this terminology? It is the area of biology concerned with the phenomena of dependence of one living organism on another. So it is a close association between two organisms. So we can define parasite. It is an organism that lives on or within, in another living organism called host. So we have parasite and we have another living organism, we call it host. The parasite live either inside or on or upon another living organism known as host, in which the parasite obtain food and protection. The parasite usually cause injury to the host, leading to parasitic disease. This is an example of parasites. Parasites that are located on the host or upon the host, we call it ectoparasites. The terminology is very easy. Ecto means outside. And in this case, we say that this patient has parasitic infestation. You can see here the terminology infestation. So the terminology parasitic infestation, it is a term applies to parasites located on the host. like lice, which is present in her. Another form of parasites, endoparasites, which are parasites located inside the host. All of us know tapeworms, tinea worm. It is located in the small intestine of man, so it is present inside the host. And we apply such a host has a parasitic infection. So the terminology parasitic infection is applied to infection with the endoparasite. So it is very easy. Parasitology is very easy subject, and the terminology denotes its meaning. We define parasitology in general. It is a close association between two organisms. But what about the terminology medical parasitology? Why we call it medical parasitology? Because here in Faculty of Medicine, we are going to study diseases which affect men. So we call it medical parasitology, parasitic diseases affecting men. There are another terminology which is veterinary parasitology, means parasites that affecting animals. It is given in veterinary medicine, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. But here in Faculty of Medicine we give medical parasitology, mainly parasites which affect man. So we can define medical parasitology. It is a branch of science or medicine dealing with parasites that infect man, the disease they produce, the clinical picture, pathogenesis, how it produces the disease, how to diagnose, how to treat, and how to prevent and control such disease. Leishmaniasis is one of the major parasitic disease. You can see it is here. It is a unicellular. It is a unicellular organism. Since it is one cell, I have to magnify it by microscope, since it is seen under high power magnification. Here we stain it with Giemsa stain. You can see it is a single cell with a single nucleus and has organ of locomotion flagella. This is seen under oil immersion lens, and here it is by scanning electron microscope, and in this picture the disease it produces. Leishmaniasis can affect the skin, causing cutaneous lesion, skin and the mucous membrane, causing mucocutaneous lesion, or affect the viscera, leading visceral form of the disease. We said parasite, we have endo and ectoparasites, but we have, according to behavior of parasite, we have different parasites. As I said, the science of parasitology is very easy, and the terminology denotes it's what I mean. Obligatory parasites came from the word obligation. What is meant by obligation? This means that this parasite is obliged to live inside the host or on the host. So the definition obligatory parasites can be defined as those parasites which cannot exist without a host. It has to be associated with its host. The reverse of obligatory parasite is a facultative parasite. Also from its name facultative, it has to choose to live inside or on a host in close association with a host, or to live free in environment. When it will live free environment, when the environmental condition is good or favorable. But when the environmental condition is not favorable, it will enter in host and live inside the host. So the terminology facultative parasites, this means that those parasites can exist independent of their host, leading to free living life in soil or water when the environmental conditions are favorable. When they are unfavorable, they enter in the host. The third is accidental or incidental parasites. What is meant by accidental? It is by chance. This means that this parasite enters this host accidentally by chance. For example, parasites of animal. Some of them can enter in man and can complete life cycle. So they are not originally parasites of man, but parasites of animal. In this case, I said that this parasite accidentally enter man. So I can define this terminology, accidental parasites. Those are those parasites which can enter and can live in a host different from the original one. I said parasites of animal can accidentally enter man, and they can live and complete the cycle of these parasites. Other parasites which cannot survive in man, but there are certain parasites can survive. We call it accidental parasites. The last one is opportunistic parasites. What is meant by opportunity? It is by chance. So what is by chance? I'll take the opportunity or the chance of the host being immunosuppressed and flourish. So they are applied to parasites of low pathogenicity, but they are become highly pathogenic and produce the disease in immunosuppressed patients. So they took the chance of the immunosuppressed states of their host and started to flourish. So we call them opportunistic parasites. On the other hand, the other living organism in which the parasite live inside or outside attached to it is called host. We have different types of host. The first is definitive host. Before we define definitive host, we have to know that in the second lecture, you are going to know that parasites are of different morphological forms. Some parasites are unicellular, like Leishmania parasites you see at the beginning of this lecture, and some parasites are multicellular, like Ascaris worm, which is a long worm about 20 centimeters in length. It is a multicellular. Ascaris worm has different sex, has male and female, and have adult stage and have larval stage. On the contrary, Leishmania, which is a single cell, don't have an adult or larval stage, but they multiply sexually or asexually. So when I define definitive host, and I have to mention a definition, can be applied to all parasites. So it is a host in which the adult stage exists or in which sexual reproduction takes place. I said adult stage because it is applied to helminthes. For example, Ascaris worm multiply only sexually, okay? But it has adult stage and has larval stage. So I have to mention it is adult stage or sexual reproduction. Leishmania parasite, which is single cell, has no adult stage, but has sexual reproduction. So this part is applied to helminthes, and this part is applied to protozoa. So when I said definition, you have to mention both. That is why in exam you said I write all, I make a good, I write everything, but I lose marks. Why I lose marks? Because you didn't mention the whole definition. If you are asked to define definitive host and you write is the other stage, host in which other stage exists, so you are going to lose marks because you didn't complete definition. What about protozoa? So it is the host in which adult stage or sexual reproduction takes place. What about intermediate host? It is the reverse of definitive host. If I said here the adult stage, what is the reverse? It is immature stage or larval stage, okay? What is the reverse of sexual reproduction? It is asexual reproduction. So the intermediate host, it is a host in which the immature stage or the larval stage exists. I can't stop here. I have to continue or to complete the definition for the protozoa, or it is a host in which asexual reproduction occurs. Reservoir host, from its name, reservoirs mean it is group of animals besides the definitive host where I can find the parasite. So when a parasite utilizes wide range of animals beside man, they complete the life cycle in nature of the parasite. I said they are reservoir. If man is not present, okay, to complete the life cycle, those animals will complete the life cycle of the parasite in nature. Please kindly notice that those parasites are also acting as a definitive host like man. Parateric or transport host, from its name, it just the transport carries the parasite. So the parasite does not undergo any development inside this host, but remain alive and infective. Exactly as if you get in a bus and get out from the bus. Nothing will be changed with you. You remain alive. Here it is the same, a transport host or paratenic host in which the larval stage of the parasite exists without undergoing any further development but remain alive and infective. The last one is a vector. Vector is a type of host. It is an arthropod which transmits or induces a disease. It is an arthropod which transmits parasites from one host to another. An example of vector, an arthropod, is a mosquito. which transmit malaria or causes malaria when it tries to take a blood meal from a healthy person. Host-parasite relationships. We said the close association between two organisms is known as symbiosis. What about the different types? If both benefits, we call it mutualism. An example is the bee and the flower, where the bee take nectar of flower and at the same time they carry pollen grains from one flower to another, so both benefit. It is a mutual benefit between them. If one benefits without causing injury to the host, we call it commensalism. Like this example also. We have parasites located inside man. For example, you know, amoeba, amoebic dysentery. It is located lives in large intestine of man, causing amoebic dysentery. Other types of amoeba live also in large intestine, and they didn't produce any disease to man. So they live and causing no disease. We call it commensal parasites. The last one is parasitism, when one benefits, take food and protection, and the other is harmed. The example is mosquito, which cause malaria to man. It gets a blood meal from its host and at the same time cause energy, cause malaria. So parasitism is defined as parasite obtain food and protection and causes injury to its host. This injury will lead to disease. We call it parasitic disease. Example, malaria and mosquito. We have certain terminology in medical parasitology you have to know. The term superinfection. If I said infection alone, this means that the person is infected with certain parasite. But what about if the same person is reinfected with the same parasite? We call it that this person has superinfection. So superinfection means reinfection. He already infected, but reinfected again with the same species, not other species of parasite. Okay? If a superinfection, it is a form of reinfection with the same parasite the host has. Autoinfection, from its name, it is a self-infection. This means that an infected person infects himself again. How come he infects himself again? If the parasite comes out with the stool and this is infective to him, if he has no good personal hygiene, he will transmit, his hand contaminated, will transmit infection again. So this is a sort of autoinfection. But since the parasite comes out from the host and enter again, we call it an external autoinfection. What happens if it didn't come out and if the parasite is located in the intestine and antiperstalsis happens, so it will return back to the upper GIT, the wall will be digested and the parasite will infect the host internally. So we call it internal autoinfection. What is meant by infective stage of the parasite? It means that the stage of the parasite in life cycle which is responsible for infection. When I catch this stage, I will get parasitic disease. Here, if you look to this diagram, if man takes this stage, he will get parasitic infection. What about diagnostic stage? It is the stage which helps me to diagnose the disease, where I can find the diagnostic stage in the host excreta. For example, if the parasite is live in small intestine, large intestine, I will find the stage in stool. If it is in urinary system, I will find it in urine. If it is present in lung, I will find it in sputum. If the parasite live in blood, I will find it in blood. So the diagnostic stage is the stage which comes out from the host and help me to diagnose the disease. From where can I get parasitic infection? Parasites present around us, everywhere around us. So from where I can get? You can get it from soil. You can get it from water. From food. Which type of food you eat? You eat meat, you eat fish, you eat raw vegetables and fruits. From animals. What type of animals? If you have pet animals at home, cats, dogs, domestic animals, sheep, cattle, okay? From an infected person, you have infected person in the family. Maybe the whole family can be infected. If you eat in a restaurant and the food handler is infected, you can catch parasitic infection from him. An arthropod, example, malaria and mosquito, you can get malaria from bite of mosquito. Iatrogenic, induced through syringe, I can get through syringe, yes. Nosocomial means that you are admitted to hospital free of parasitic infection, and when you charge it from the hospital after a week, you are diagnosed to have a parasitic infection. From where I get the infection? You get it from the hospital. We call it nosocomial infection. Transplacental, the baby inside his mother during gestation can get parasite if the mother has parasitic disease. Transmammary, if the mother has parasitic infection, they can transmit the parasite in her milk while feeding her baby. Let us see how these are the different sources of parasitic infection. The soil. If a child plays in soil, his hand will be contaminated, and if he enters his hand in his mouth, he will get the infective stage of the parasite located in soil. Or if soil contaminates vegetables and fruits, you eat vegetables and fruits imperfectly washed, the soil present will transmit the infection. Another form of infection, if you walk barefoot, the soil contains parasites. How parasites enter the barefoot? It can enter through skin penetration. We have certain parasites having larvae, and the mode of infection is through penetration of skin. So in this case, we can contract parasitic infection from soil. Water, unclean water. Can people drink unclean water? Yes, they can drink unclean water in area where there is no proper water supply, no clean, safe water present in this area. They have to drink from canals, from unclean water in poor areas, which are very common in Africa. Water can be unclean if they are stored in water tanks above houses. So these tanks has to be periodically washed. If not washed, you can find inside these parasites contaminating water. While drinking it, you will catch parasitic infection. Also, in rivers and canals, there are parasites which can enter through skin penetration. So in this case, the child, while swimming in rivers and canals, he can contract parasitic infection through skin penetration. An example, vegetable-harziasis or schistosomiasis, a disease, was common in Egypt. Food. If you eat food, you can catch parasitic infection. What type of food? You eat meat. Which type of meat? Beef meat. All of us eat beef meat. If the beef meat is infected with parasites, it can transmit to us infection. If we eat pork meat, it can transmit other types of parasites. But here in Islamic countries, you should find that parasites transmitted by pork is rare. But unfortunately, sometimes you find in Islamic countries parasites transmitted porks. Because unhonest people, when preparing processed meat, start to mix pork meat with beef meat because it's very cheap. So they mix both types and make processed meat. So you have to take care not to eat processed meat except from honest people, from well-known source, to be safe. Fish can be source of parasitic infection. What type of fish? We have salmon fish can transmit parasites, buri fish, balti fish. All these types of fish can transmit parasites. How come fish transmit parasites? If you eat it raw, uncooked. Now we have filet balti. Some people start to make sushi at home with flesh filet of buri fish. Or imperfectly grilled buri fish. You look, this is probably grilled fish, but these two are imperfectly grilled. So the infective stage of parasite will still remain. So I can get infection if the fish is imperfectly cooked or grilled. Also, fisikh or salted fish, if it is imperfectly salted, less than 7 days, the parasites inside it is still remaining alive and you can catch parasitic infection. Improperly washed vegetables or fruits contaminated with soil can transmit parasitic infection. Animals, as I said previously, if you had cat, can transmit a disease known as the toxoplasmosis, which is common in pregnant women and cause abortion or congenitally transmitted to their baby. The dogs, if they are not clean, can transmit parasitic infection. Also animals like sheep, cow, buffaloes can transmit parasitic infection. The diseases are originally diseases of animals, but when they are transmissible to man, we call them zoonotic diseases. They are originally diseases of animals which are transmissible to man. This term, we call it zoonotic disease. Infected person, as I said in restaurant, if a worker or food handler is infected with parasitic infection, he can transmit the infection to you. He doesn't have good personal hygiene, contaminated hand preparing food, so you are going to take this food containing parasites, you are going to be infected. Therefore, food handlers should have a hygiene certificate before working in a restaurant. So you have to forbid them eating from peddlers in the streets and so on. Also, infected person, if a child has a certain parasitic infection, we are going to take in lecture in module 2, parasitic infection like enterobiasis. It is a disease common in children. The infective stage comes out in the stool of the child. If he didn't wash his hands, play with his brother, he can transmit infection to him. Also, this parasite can spread in air, so other members of the family can catch the parasitic infection through inhalation, airborne infection. So once the disease starts in the family, you will find the whole family infected. Arthropods, as I said previously, mosquito can transmit malaria. Another arthropod, the sandfly, can transmit leishmania. As I said, leishmania can cause cutaneous disease, mucocutaneous or visceral form. Iatrogenic means that the parasite can introduce through the needle. Here in hospital, if we transmit blood to a patient, parasites can be present in the blood if it is not properly examined, so through blood transfusion or through needle in drug addict. If a person has malaria and he is a drug addict, the syringe introduces the drug in his blood vessel, so it will be contaminated with his blood. If the same syringe will be used by another addict, so the blood will introduced into the second person and will transmit the parasitic infection. So a iatrogenic infection is common in syringe drug addict using syringe. Nosocomial infection, as I said previously, the patient admitted to hospital has no parasitic disease. When he charged out from the hospital, he was diagnosed to have a parasitic infection. He contracts the disease while inside the hospital. For example, if he takes blood transfusion, contaminated blood, not properly examined in blood bank. Transplacental means that the mother has the disease and transmits it to her baby during gestation. Through the placenta, the parasite will be transmitted and the child will be born having a congenital form of the disease. You see here a child has hydrocephalus, has chorioretinitis, has hepatosplenomegaly, has jaundice. We will call it a disease known as congenital toxoplasmosis acquired congenitally through the placenta. Transmammary, we said previously that parasites can be present in the milk while the mother feeds her baby. What about the portal of entry? We have discussed where parasites exist around us, but here how they enter inside our body. They can enter through our mouth while eating, while drinking. They can enter through the skin. I said that water can transmit parasitic infection through parasites that penetrate the skin. This means that parasite can enter active through skin penetration, for example, like schistosomiasis, or can enter passive While a mosquito takes blood meal, she will inject the parasite. Here the parasite didn't enter active the skin, but enter passive, while the arthropod take a blood meal. Enter through the respiratory tract. As I said, the example of a child having tropiasis. Through airborne, the mother and father can contract the infection. Placenta. As I said about toxoplasmosis, the parasite can pass through the placenta or can pass through the genital tract in sexually transmitted parasitic diseases. This is the portal entry, and the stage enter, we call it the infective stage. So the infective stage can be defined. It is the stage of the parasite which is taken by the host and responsible for causing parasitic disease. On the other hand, we have portal of exit. The parasite has to exit from its host to complete its life cycle and to infect another host. We call the stage that comes out from the host the diagnostic stage, and we use it to diagnose the disease. The portal of exit can be the feces if the parasite lives in a small or large intestine, can be urine if it lives in urinary system, can be sputum if it exists in the lung, can be blood. For example, malaria parasite lives inside red blood cells. So if I take blood donors, the blood will comes out, malaria will comes out with the blood. Or unclean mosquito takes a blood meal, will take the malaria parasite from the blood, so the portal of exit is blood. The genital secretion in sexually transmitted parasites. Habitat, it is the place where the parasite live and may multiply. We said previously that parasites can live here in small intestine, okay? Can live in large intestine, can live inside red blood cells or outside red blood cells. You can live in blood, can live in cells of reticuloendothelial system. So you are going to find them multiplying in this system. Any system contains cells of reticuloendothelial system will be invaded. So we are going to find organomegaly in those patients, splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, lymphadenopathy. If the bone marrow is involved, you will find that the function of the bone marrow affected. You can find parasites living in lymphatic system, for example, the disease filariasis or elephantiasis. It blocks the lymphatic system, leading to enlargement of the lower limbs, a disease known as elephantiasis. The life cycle of the parasite, it is a cycle of development of parasite from the definitive host again to it or to another host. If the parasite utilize only one host, there is no other host. The parasite from one host exit and re-enter again, we call it that this parasite has a direct life cycle. On the other hand, if it utilizes two hosts, we can say that this parasite has indirect life cycle. So parasites having indirect life cycle utilizes more than one species of hosts. How can parasites causing disease? The pathogenesis of parasitic infection, it can be mechanical, okay? It can be toxic, the parasite inject toxin. It can cause necrosis. It can secrete lytic enzymes leading to necrosis of host cells. It can act through stimulation of the immune system, whether humoral or cellular immune response, leading to disease. It can lead to cellular destruction. It enters inside the cell like malaria parasite. To complete the life cycle and to exit, it has to rupture the cell to come out. For example, parasites located or inhibit cells of reticuloendothelial system. It will multiply until the cell become enlarged and rupture. So the mechanism of the disease is due to cellular destruction. The last one is neoplastic transformation. The parasite will induce changes in the cells leading to malignant transformation. So parasites can be a carcinogenic agents. Let's see together how this occurs. For example, mechanical. You can see here A group of worms, this is an Ascaris worm. When a large number of Ascaris worms aggregate together in the intestine, they will lead to obstruction. As a result, this patient will have intestinal obstruction, and the mechanism of the disease here is obstructive due to mechanical factor. Also, mechanically, the parasite can invade the tissue, cause damage. We have, all of us know, the black fly, the green fly, and the flesh fly. All of us see them. These are called Hyraceptor. This Hyraceptor, in order to complete its life cycle, has to lay egg or larva. This larva has to invade the tissue, either of man or animals, or attracted to offensive discharge by animals or men. For example, if a child in a village has a discharge from his nose or a discharge from his eyes, the fly will be attracted by the odor and start to lay egg or larvae in her eye, in his ear, or in skin. So it will start to enter his skin and will invade the tissue by trauma, causing cutaneous lesion. We call it cutaneous myiasis. The disease is known as myiasis. If it is located in the skin, we call it cutaneous myiasis. If it is attracted to the mucous membrane of the mouth, you call it oral myiasis. You see the larva of Hyraceptor here. They are worm-like structures, so we call it myiasis. If it is attracted to the eye, you call it ocular myiasis. To the ear, we call it oral myiasis. The second mechanism is toxins. Toxin, the example is the scorpion. The scorpion sting, you can find here a telson and a sharp needle. The scorpion, if the sting human, it will inject the toxin. Here you can find the toxin of the scorpion. If you didn't save this child, he will die. Immediately he will die, because it will cause, this toxin will disseminate to his body, leading to respiratory failure and so on. It is an emergency case and should be immediately treated. So the mechanism of disease here is due to toxin. Necrosis, as I said, it will secrete, the parasite secrete histolytic enzymes or lytic enzyme. An example is amoeba that lives in large intestine and cause ulcer in large intestine, is responsible for amoebic dysentery. This amoeba can reach the liver. In the liver, it can, by its enzyme, it induce necrosis of the tissue. As a result, amoebic liver abscess will be formed. The pathogenesis is due to necrosis by the lytic enzymes secreted by the parasite. Stimulation of the host immune system. If the parasite stimulates the cellular immune response, this will lead to, you can see here the parasite located. This is the egg of Bilharzia, and the body will respond by cellular reaction or granulomatous reaction around the egg. This is a granulomatous reaction due to cellular stimulation of cellular immune response. Other results, this is on not only one egg, thousands of eggs will be located in the liver. As a result of granulomatous reaction, the liver will be enlarged. The liver is part of the portal system. As a result, the spleen will be also enlarged. So the pathogenesis here is due to stimulation of the cellular immune response. Also, mosquito, if you are bitten by a mosquito, clean mosquito, not infected, you will suffer from dermatitis. Some people can suffer from anaphylactic reaction due to bite of mosquito. Also, fleas, when bite man, can lead to dermatitis. Also, scabies, scabies, it is a skin disease. The mechanism is allergic, leading to dermatitis. The lice, which infect the hair and the body of man. Body louse can secrete saliva. The saliva is irritating the skin, can leading to skin reaction. The mechanism is allergic reaction. I said previously cellular destruction, and the example is malaria. Malaria lives inside red blood cells, and the cell will be ruptured in order for parasite to be liberated and complete life cycle. As a result of destruction of red blood cells, there will be hemolytic anemia, and this will be manifested as jaundice. The patient will have a yellow coloration of the skin, a yellow coloration of the sclera and the skin. This is the pathogenesis of malaria, lead to hemolytic anemia and its subsequence. Also, as I said, that the presence of parasites inside the urinary bladder, for example, we have a common example, urinary schistosomiasis, will induce malignant transformation of the cells of the urinary bladder. As a result, those patients will have cancer urinary bladder, so parasites can be carcinogenic agents. By this we end our lecture, which is a general introduction to parasitology. Please, if you don't understand anything, please feel free to come and ask me. You are more than welcome. Thank you.